Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 20 of the Wheatley podcast. Thanks for the support. We had a good podcast last week with Simon on it, and it seemed to people seem to enjoy it. And the people who sent us messages and likes and all that, like, it's great. It's always a bonus for us. And Simon enjoyed it too. He wants to come back on at some point, so we will have him on. Listen, we're on Discord now at the moment. It's a server that John set up. We have a number of people over there. It's about 20 over there, I think. Just a little community. We're trying to get on the go instead of me having to do the Saturday live stuff, which is great, but I was kind of bored of it, I suppose. So join us over there. But that's kind of I think that's all I have to say at the start anyway. My guest today is a clinical hypnotherapist, and the first guest who actually works professionally to help people, particularly with anxiety. And she is Teresa Bolger. Teresa, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. well, we'll see how this goes, and then we'll see.
Anytime when there's no coronavirus.
Yeah. Can we? Because this, I think people know. I've said it a number of times on the podcast. This was the next episode lined up, and then all this stuff went to pot.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just a short history of your upbringing, please?
A short history of my upbringing. So I'm a blow into Westmeath. I'm from Wexford, a little village called Ballygarrett in Wexford. So that's where I grew up, and I had a lovely childhood. I grew up by the seaside. Then I would have moved. I left home when I was just after my 18th birthday, and I would have probably been what you'd classify as a bit of a bold girl, a bit wild for a while. And then in my early 20s, I ended up, by twist of fate, living in Westmeath and working in a recording studio. So that was for 12 years. And that's what I did then. I enjoyed that. It had its ups and downs and some interesting stories there, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But I took an interest then in mental health and ended up moving into clinical hypnotherapy. So.
Nice. And was there, like, your history with mental health, like, when was the first time you kind of became aware of it?
It's a strange thing. Only last night I was talking to a friend of mine, and I actually think from very early in life, we were talking about mental health, depression, anxiety, all that stuff, and before, when I considered that question, I would have probably said, late teens, early 20s, but when I look at it, I think very early in play, probably 8 or 9, there was little things that would have kind of got on top of me. I was very aware of very kind of dark, dreary stuff as a child, you know, the eternal goth. But I became aware, you know, with a Catholic upbringing, there's a lot of talk around death, and I was very aware of death and the concept of, you know, life after death, and was it real, and eternity, and I used to get very caught up in that stuff and worry a lot about it, and I'd worry about the death of loved ones, you know, the inevitability of that stuff. Now, I wasn't a child, it wasn't Wednesday Addams, you know, but I just spent a lot of time pondering kind of dark subject matter that, you know, maybe a child would probably be better off not thinking too much about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I became aware of, you know, stuff that can bother your head, so to speak. And then a bit later in life, I would have, what I now know, suffered with anxiety. I didn't realise that was what was happening. At the time, it was my personality. You know, that's just me. I'm a worrier. I worried a lot. I felt inadequate a lot around other people. And as most, well, not most, but a lot of teenagers do, I would have turned to some fairly unhealthy coping mechanisms, including alcohol. And so it would have got a bit worse in late teens, early 20s. And I suffered with depression. Thankfully, something that is years and years behind me. The anxiety would have hung on longer. But I would have suffered with depression from probably 16 to 20, in and around that time period. So, yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But thankfully, that's not an issue for a long time.
Especially, I suppose, at that age, it's something that you're not mature enough to kind of grasp onto. And like you say, like, people, including myself, turn to things like alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. And when you realize that, you know, this is what it was, whether it was anxiety or depression, what ways did you deal with it? Could you deal with it without the use of maybe alcohol? I'll just say alcohol for this purpose, like.
At that time,
Yeah.
could I? No, I hadn't
Okay.
really got the maturity or
Yeah.
the understanding of what was going on. I just felt bleak, life
Yeah.
just felt a bit bleak, and I couldn't pinpoint, why it wasn't X, Y, and Z happened, and now I'm sad. I just often felt really low and as if kind of, it sounds a bit cheesy, but life lacked colour.
Yeah.
It just got really kind of grey, and it wasn't particularly desperately sad, but I also didn't experience much joy very often. So if you turn to alcohol, you do get those moments of euphoria and everything's great, but of course there's the payoff, which is pretty well, it's immediate, isn't it, with hangovers.
Yeah.
But then there's the long-term payoff. It's not a great coping mechanism.
Yeah,
but
it's
got
not.
those little pockets of fun in there, but I didn't deal well. And but I went to a doctor at 16 and was put on very strong antidepressants.
Yeah.
Which in retrospect, and I would like to preface this by saying I am not knocking modern medicine. It has its place and it's fantastic. And but I mean, I think I was in the consultation room at 16 years of age with, my hair over one eye and loads of eyeliner, holding a Jim Morrison book. I'm sad, and like, I was.
You
sad,
were, yeah, of course,
but
yeah.
I probably could have done with some kind of intervention other than here's a script for amitriptyline. I didn't even at that time. Wasn't on the question a doctor.
Yeah, of course,
Doctor
yeah,
knows best. I took them away, and I continued to take them for a couple of years. And did I discover it was a book called Beyond Prozac, or there was some book I picked up at some point when I was around 18.
It's not Prozac Nation, was it? That was a big one, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure. I can't remember the author, but I think it was. I could be getting my timelines mixed up, but I remember at some point finding a book that discussed dealing with mental health issues, without medication. And I remember, it became apparent to me. I was thinking, I'm not okay. I'm still not okay. I was very numb a lot of the time. You had Joanne on recently, and I could really relate to a lot of the things she said about that kind of numb feeling. So there was no there was no great joy going on, and I not recommending this at all. I just got rid.
So there was no bounce there, absolutely no bounce from what you were taking.
No, throwing your antidepressants in the back of a fire without consulting with a medical professional.
It's not.
Kids don't do what I did.
No.
But I actually there was a really horrific time in the immediate aftermath of that, because I hadn't any coping mechanisms in place. And I just began to live a life where I was still doing a lot of unhealthy things to cope with my emotions, but I could feel things again. So there were joyous moments and sad. And music, for example, I had stopped enjoying music, and throughout my life the one consistent thing that can force feeling out of me is music. If everything else has gone to I can put music on in the car or whatever, and just it'll bring some kind of feeling out. So I began to feel things again and enjoy certain things, and have crashing lows that were horrendous. But the medication, it wasn't the job for me. But who knows, had I been given different medications or dosed, it was just a very quick, there you go, out the door. And I took them unquestioningly for 2 years. So that's it. That's the early days.
The early days. But do you know what I think is interesting, though, that you went from that, like, depression and anxiety, and like you said in the part about your upbringing, when you moved into the clinical hypnotherapy, where was that moment where you thought, I could do something within this field?
With the hypnotherapy, I actually fell into hypnotherapy because I used to smoke very, very heavily, and I became one of those absolute a-hole evangelists when I stopped, because I was I lie, I was not preachy, but I was so deranged with the joy of the fact that I had stopped, because I hated the fact I smoked. I started at 13, and then I perfected it by 16 to the point that I was smoking 20, 30 cigarettes a day for years. Yeah. And when I cracked it, and like I had made numerous attempts, and it was just awful. I'd lost a matter of hours, and I'd want to murder everyone around me. And eventually, when I kind of pieced together the code, there was a number of things fell into place, and I put out my last cigarette, and I all I felt was relief and joy, and I wanted to impose that joy on everybody. And I would hear myself. I'd be in the pub. I drank back then, and I continued to drink long after I stopped smoking. I always hasten to add that, because I think some people think, oh, you stopped smoking, so you couldn't go for a pint.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I could drink for Ireland for years after I stopped smoking. Yeah. Grown men under the table, nothing to be proud of. But I did continue to drink, but I'd be in the pub, and I would hear myself saying, it can be really easy, and it's brilliant, and I did it. And I think, Jesus, just shut up, because if that was somebody saying that to smoking me, I just want to slap them silly. But it was coming from a genuine, I want you to know it can be done. So I looked into how can I do this for people who actually want it, rather than me cornering some poor sod in the pub and telling them that not smoking, that's the way you should be living your life, man. Yeah. So I looked into hypnotherapy, because I'd heard people talking about having hypnotherapy, and I was on 40 a day, and I walked out and I never touched another one. So I looked into becoming a clinical hypnotherapist. But in doing that, discovered that there was an awful lot more you can do with hypnotherapy than smoke cessation. So even though smoke cessation was the impetus for me going into it, and it is a huge passion still of mine, I learned when I began to train so much more about what it can do for people. Can
you give it just to the layman? I know myself and yourself have met up a couple of times. So I've had a good explanation from you about what exactly clinical hypnotherapy is.
Okay.
I don't mean a nutshell now. You can talk and talk. It's fine.
There's no nutshell.
Yeah, you go for it.
And there'll be rows left, right and centre between different therapists and all the rest of it. My brief explanation of clinical hypnotherapy for anxiety, okay? So if you've somebody that comes in for anxiety, they're struggling that way, the basis of clinical hypnotherapy would be, it's like... it's based around psychoanalysis, where you're kind of doing investigative. Yeah. Yay, I do. Good one. I always struggle with that.
That's a tough word.
Oh yeah, go me. But you're kind of digging around for the root cause of what's going on. So, it's based upon nothing in your adulthood, nothing that's bothering you, no symptom you have has come from the ether. It's come from somewhere. I've just whacked the microphone.
That's all right, I do it all the time.
It's come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And in the clinical environment, what you're doing is coming into the therapist, the hypnosis, I'll have to probably explain that separately. Cool. Yeah. So when the person is in hypnosis, which, to simplify that, when they're relaxed and inwardly focused, when they're not thinking about what to have for dinner or a row they had with their missus earlier, that's all it is. It's not a magical state or anything like that. So when they're in that state, I just help them source where the feelings they have today are coming from, because more often than not, the strings are being pulled from the past, and it's often stuff you're not aware of. Traumas. Yeah. And when you talk about trauma, immediately the mind goes to abuse, violence, which sadly are hugely common. But trauma to a small mind can be something that an onlooker would think is something small, nothing, a cruel comment, and that can just take root and create a feeling in you. So if you are 7 years of age and the teacher singles you out in the room and tells you you're stupid, or teachers, I've heard some really awful things. I'm like, what, this person was meant to be educating you and you were in their care. Teachers have, I'm sure nowadays it doesn't happen so much, but I've met people who had really horrendously, humiliating things said to them in front of their peers when they were little, and they might have forgotten about it. They haven't gone through life going, I can't believe that Mrs. Smith said when I was 6, but that moment has just taken root. They were humiliated. They looked around the room. Everyone was laughing. They burnt up, blushed. And then life carried on. But that has just kind of perforated the subconscious, and it's created a feeling in the person.
Yeah.
I'm a bit stupid. People laugh at me. Everyone's looking at me. And if you have something like that happen, and then something else, and they're all just little things, because quite often a person will sit down and go, now nothing bad ever happened to me.
Yeah.
You know, there's no trauma in my life. And I do it myself. Even when I was talking to you earlier on, I was very quick to say I had a lovely childhood. And I did. I had loving parents. You know, I had a lovely childhood. But I had plenty of things that I discovered when I went for my own hypnotherapy or hypnoanalysis before I went into practice. And I was like, I don't know how many weeks later going, oh, okay, I do have issues.
Yeah.
Plenty of issues.
Actually, now that because you pointed out to me after an episode I did, I don't know how long ago it was, I don't know what episode it was even, but I talked a little bit about the procedure that I had on the appendix, and you pointed out I didn't think of it as trauma for whatever reason, just that he can go there. It was just, but for me it was just a bad event or something, you know. But when you said it to me, and I kind of thought about it a bit more, I was like, of course it was traumatic. Like it left a deep imprint on me, like, you know.
Yeah, because I was listening to it going, oh my God, I have to send him a 40-page text to explain what's going on. But that sounded horrendous. It was
rough. But I do find that interesting about the idea that people, and like me with that incident, people don't see the bad things that they have.
But you minimise it. Yeah. As an adult, you minimise a child's experience, not out of just being dismissive, but you know, you look and say, look, everybody goes through stuff. Or, you know, it's only a little thing. And maybe it was a little thing. It was an incident that happened. It was a couple of minutes or whatever. But to a small child, things are, you know, they're figuring the world out. Everything is new. Everything's scary. You're trying to fit in. You're trying to see what life is about. And something that to an onlooker, an adult, might look like, it's just, you know, you've had a bit of an upset. You know, dry your eyes, get over it. It can still have a huge impact on the child's mind, you know.
We're far more brutal, because if it happened to a child of ours, we'd see it as a much bigger event. Yeah. But because if it happened to us when we were young and we grow, it's a different.
You'd berate yourself. Yeah. Get a grip. People have been through a lot worse. That's a huge thing. You know. You kind of think, I don't deserve to feel bad about what happened to me. My friend went through X, Y, and Z. Yeah. But that's not how life is, you know. No. It's just.
And my mother said that to me after it was a certain point of, you know, it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a pretty bad way and stuff, and I was obviously always thinking like, well, somebody else has, you know, less money, whatever it is, like they're living in poverty, they're having very tough. And she used to say, you can't compare yourself with someone else all the time, because it's just what you are at the moment. It's what you are. It's not and I hadn't even thought about it at that point until she said it. So it makes a lot of sense to me now, but it always takes somebody who's a bit smarter and wiser than you to kind of say, listen, it could be, you know, it could be a lot worse, you know. So first, right, so when I go into your practice, first session, we'll say, right? Now we'll just talk about anxiety for the moment, but so someone's going to be very anxious. An anxious person, if they haven't met you and they're doing something that they've never done before, is going to be anxious. What's your approach to that?
Just me, Derek. I'm just such a calming influence.
It's exactly it. It's exactly it.
I am. I jest, but I would have. I generally can have people feeling calm fairly quickly. Yeah. But, they'll have generally spoken to me on the phone first. Yeah. So I'll get a message and I'll ask, "Do you okay to take a call or whatever?" So I would tend to put people at ease, but the clinical environment it's calming. The place I work from, actually, the Dancing Soul, it's a really nice atmosphere. It's a nice calm little haven. So you come in there, and you know, when you're in a room with somebody whose sole purpose is to help you feel better, I think it puts people at ease. They kind of know, like, I'm here for help, and when I'm sitting opposite a client, my only interest in that time is them feeling better. You know? So I generally find people ease in very quickly, even if they are anxious. There are times where somebody will be sitting on the edge of the seat and they're edgy, and in that instance I would just, before I even ask questions, I'll show them some little calming technique.
Okay, yeah.
I threw one up on Facebook there recently, but your breathing is, just something as simple as that. And I'm not implying now, if you sort out your breathing, life is going to be fantastic. Just meditate. But those things do help. If you're breathing easily, when we're anxious, we automatically shallow breathe.
Yeah.
And when you shallow breathe, your heart beats faster, you feel more anxious. So if you can kind of stop somebody and go, hey, we're just going to take a couple of minutes now, and I'll get them to close their eyes down, big deep breaths into the diaphragm, let it go, and they come down a good few notches on the scale of anxiety, and then they'll start talking, and you'll be amazed then. It's once the lid is open, they'll just whoosh,
it could just comes out then. That
it diffuses at some point.
Yeah. There's two things though, because you, like, I've met you a couple of times, and you're a person who's you seem very at ease with people.
Yeah.
Would that be a...
Yes, I am now.
It took you a while though, would you say?
Yeah, not that... I doubt if you met anybody from childhood to today, if you said to them, would Teresa be uneasy around you? I would have hidden it very well. But there would have been a lot of bravado going on.
Okay, right. Yeah. You were good at that though. Like.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, really good at it. Yeah, but no, I'm at ease now. It's the anxiety thing, inadequacy. I would have had a big feeling of being inadequate or having to be funny. So you put me in with people, I think I have to entertain here. Yeah. I can't just be here. I have to be doing something. And
but that, like, in the job that you're in now, obviously that helps an awful lot. Like.
Humour.
Yeah. It's massive.
But it diffuses things for people hugely.
I mean, I am happy for people if I'm anxious and in a situation I'm not normally in. I'm happy for people to take that lead of just being funny and that helps. And then the breathing is another thing that's it's just one of those things that I found an app or something. I can't even remember, it was years ago. Yeah. And I just started to use it. I thought at the time, this is silly. But when I'm getting a panic attack in a shop now, I'll start to get the proper breaths into my stomach and things like that. And all of a sudden, it just does take it the edge off.
First best thing you can do. It's something you have control over. You can immediately grab that and go, right, I'm going to breathe.
Yeah. It's so important to just breathe.
I know, it sounds funny, but it's sometimes it's a wood for the tree situation. The most obvious thing. Have you remembered to breathe today?
You're sound.
Yeah.
So actually, do you know what we'll do? We'll before we get into the next little bit, we'll throw in the ad because Martin will be getting a bit anxious himself if you don't. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts, and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. I was in there on Tuesday, did a little workout in the car park. It was very good.
Cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed it actually because it was kind of like today. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too sunny, and I couldn't move on Wednesday though because the lifting.
Because I follow Fusion on Facebook.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they were all set up out in the.
Yeah,
you were there, were you?
I was there one of the days.
Oh, yeah,
yeah. I was there when they did a cool video of a drone and that coming in on it, and they've taken some pictures. But I was there one day. I really enjoyed going back in, just being able to chat to a few people.
Sure,
it was really nice. So yeah, if you want to get fit or whatever, just give Martin a shout or on the Facebook page or whatever, and I might get some, I don't know, free hoodie or something. So what's the difference in approach then, Teresa, when you're talking about somebody with anxiety and a smoker who wants to stop?
Okay, so I have an entirely different approach for smokers, and how I do that is I do it over 2 sessions.
Okay.
So with anxiety, it can be an ongoing process over, it can be months, I always tell clients I want to see as little of you as possible, not because I dislike you, but if I'm not seeing you, life's good. You're out the door.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm not in the habit of keeping people coming in for months and months on end. I have to see progress, and they have to see progress, and that can be an ongoing process because you have anxiety for years. You're generally not going to come in, be hypnotized for an hour, and life is good.
Yeah.
However, with smoking, it can, and like any addiction or any issue in life, there's no guarantee with this, but quite often it can be dealt with very quickly. And I do it over, like I said, 2 sessions a week apart. And I've kind of honed this method myself. You know, I've obviously learned from various different people, but I've put this program together myself. It's mine. So what I do is bring the person in for session 1, and there's no hypnotherapy involved in that session at all.
Okay.
So I set them up, I call it like laying a foundation for success. So I'll teach them about smoking, because they're, as I know myself, this is all from personal experience. I know what it's like. But a person who smokes generally doesn't understand the nature of their addiction at all. I didn't for years. You will smoke mindlessly. It might be annoying you to the point that, you know, you're already ill from it. I've met people who have already got lung cancer.
Yeah.
They're still smoking. It will have lost all sheen of a treat that I have. It's just something that's completely enslaving me. And quite often a client will sit down and say to me, you know, tell me why you're here. Because I effing hate them. And I have heard that phrase more times than I can count.
Yeah.
And isn't it strange that normally when you hate something, you avoid it like the plague. It's easy to avoid. Or if you see someone coming down the street you can't stand, you dip into a shop. Cigarettes, you can hate them. You know they're actually killing you. They're hurting you. They are not your friend. But you cannot. You're compelled to keep going back at them, and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
So I believe it's really important to understand that first before you even attempt to get rid of it from your life. Because if you don't understand that, you're always in danger of going back.
Yeah.
So, for example, I'll meet people who come in and say, I was 9 years off them, and then something happened. So it'll be quite often a bereavement or a breakup.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, something dodgy has happened, and that old urge from nowhere, nothing comes from nowhere, but it'll just happen, and they'll say, and I don't know what came over me, and before I knew it I was smoking, and I wouldn't mind only it tasted rotten when I lit it up, but I'm back on 40 a day now, and I don't know why. So I don't want anyone that leaves my clinic after the second session when they stop smoking coming back and saying, I ended up after 3 years smoking again, I don't know why. I believe if you're set up to understand what it is that keeps drawing you back to something that's damaging you and hurting you, you know your enemy. And cliches a go-go, if you know your enemy, knowledge is power. And it's true. And you're armed then for when you do get rid, you stay rid, because you know what got you into that cycle in the first place. Now, I could keep you here for 3 days discussing that phenomena that goes on whereby you're compelled to do something that you're not enjoying because you don't. Now I know there'd be people screaming at me going, of course I enjoy smoking. We're not actually enjoying it. And I realised that myself towards the end of my smoking career. You do it mindlessly. You don't even know why you're doing it anymore. Josh is your buddy that was on. He spoke, actually made me think of it. He spoke about, he exercises regularly, and he said he does it automatically now. He said, you know, I don't even know why I do it anymore. But if you're doing something for a long period of time, it can become mindless. Now, exercise, great. There's good things happening because you're doing that. But with smoking, you'll meet some. You can see a smoker, right? Put a cigarette in an ashtray, and then pick another one out of the box and light it. They've forgotten they're smoking. They're completely unaware of it. It becomes this mindless cycle of something they do, and they're not aware of it until they try and remove it. And then it becomes omnipresent, the most important thing in the whole world. Nothing else matters. And they have to have them, but they don't know why.
It's a really strange one because I smoked as well. Now, it was about 10 or 12 a day. It wasn't a huge amount, but it's still, you know, enough that it put me off them and I wanted to give up. So I haven't smoked in about 11, 12 years, right? So, but if I see someone on TV like Humphrey, or like a film, Humphrey Bogart, He always makes smoking look nice. It always looks sort of,
yeah.
you know those
Yeah,
kind of
that
clips?
luxuriating
Yeah,
cigarette.
and that
Yeah.
smoke and the black and white, it just,
Yeah.
and that, they're the only time I get an urge to kind of go, oh, I'd love a cigarette. And when you say about not enjoying the process, I think I only enjoyed the one after dinner.
Yeah.
And I think the rest were just, like you, automatic, and I just went and did them.
Yeah.
Just smoked, like.
Yeah, I know what you mean with that kind of romanticized
Yeah.
thing. But if you actually observe smokers, say if you go and by a bus stop and you'll see somebody kind of hunched over and they're lighting the cigarette, they're not having a great time at all.
No, it's not as romantic, no.
But just because I know and I understand that people might be listening going, oh, shut your face. You know, I don't enjoy smoking. Why the hell am I smoking 30 cigarettes? And I totally understand that. But I would ask anyone who's thinking to themselves, I love me fags. You know, I want to stop and they're bothering me. If you sit down with a cigarette and you remove all other stimulus, right? No music on, no chat with your buddy.
Yeah.
Just you and your cigarette. And from the moment you spark it up to the very last drag you take off it, pay attention to nothing but the act of the smoking. What does it taste like? What does it feel like? What's the sensation of the smoke filling up your mouth, going down your throat, into your lungs? Now, if you enjoy doing something, you'll relish every moment. So you're watching your favourite film. You don't want the phone going off. You don't want people talking to you. You want to be immersed in that act because it's something you enjoy. So if you love your cigarettes, it would therefore stand to reason that if there's nothing else going on, you're thinking about nothing else, talking to nobody else, and just fully immersed in the act of smoking, you're going to be having time of your life.
Yeah.
And the spoiler is, I get people to go away and do that in the week before they stop.
Yeah.
And I have people come in that were on 40 cigarettes today saying, Jesus Christ, it's tedious. And then I can say, well, look, now I'm not telling you. You know, I don't sit there and say, now, you're not enjoying your cigarettes and you're going to stop today, because I know if that was me, I'd just think, oh, spare me with it. But if I send them away and get them to pay attention to their smoking, it'll be the first time they've paid attention to it since they started. They're aware at the start because it's new and it's strange and it feels weird. And then for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it just becomes what I do. I smoke.
Yeah, yeah.
But I smoke when I'm having a beer with my mates. I smoke when I'm having my morning coffee and thinking about what I have to do for the day. I smoke when I'm a rock star in the car singing along with the music. I'm still a rock star in my car, by the way.
Yeah,
but I just don't have a cigarette in my hand. But it really is a mindless act.
It is, yeah.
So people will say, I love my fags, and I'll go, fine, that's grand. Take them away with you and spend a romantic week with them. You're about to break up.
Yeah.
And just, you know, you and your cigarettes have your week together. And I have never had anyone ever come back and say, wow, Jesus, that was gorgeous. I loved every minute of it.
That's very, obviously I'm glad I don't have to go through that exercise now, but it's very interesting breakdown of something that's nobody will have thought of who smokes. So you probably have answered this question now, but so you're saying it's only 2 sessions that people would see you for cigarettes? Yeah.
Now I have what I called a lifetime guarantee.
Okay.
So as with any addiction, it's not, you know, there's no guarantees that everything's going to be fine and dandy. I do my level best. I give 100% to everybody because I'm actually driven to do this. It's, you know, it's my job because I want it to be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing makes me happier than somebody ringing me up and saying, Jesus, this is great, you know. But sometimes there can be rocks in the road or whatever. So what I do is the 2 sessions, the first session being you learn about cigarettes, about the nature of the addiction, why you're stuck in it. Then you go away and I give you some homework to do, including your romantic week with your cigarettes. And you show yourself what you're about to leave behind. You know, you shine a light on it and look at it rather than having a romanticized notion when you stop. Oh, I loved that fag in the morning, it was great. But when you actually have it and you look at it, you know, sometimes it's like, actually, by the 3rd drag I was bored. You know what I mean? So there's that. And then the second session is the hypnosis part. So I work with there's a deep-rooted subconscious belief that you need cigarettes going on, and it's completely wrong. There's nobody born with a need to smoke. But the hypnosis part, the suggestion therapy, is to help them uproot that and replace it with seeing themselves live a smoke-free life. So if you think of your imagination as like a rehearsal room. So if you see something happening in your imagination very vividly, you can believe it and live it. So that's why sometimes if hypnosis alone can work for some people, they'll come to see a hypnotherapist and they'll stand up and walk out of the chair and I used to smoke 40 a day, I just don't care, and it can seem magical. But that's why I like first to put the foundation in place so you understand the addiction, then deal with the subconscious stuff, and off they go. Now beyond that, if that person in 3 hours, 3 days, 3 years, if there's breath in my body, they can pick up the phone to me and say, I'm struggling to not smoke, or I've had a cigarette and I'm really annoyed, they can come back to me and I don't charge them anymore. I'll get them back on the path of righteousness. And that's, you know, but that's, I hope that's a testimony to the fact that I do want my clients to succeed.
And there's a confidence in it.
Give us money out the door. You know, I want to hear you're doing well, or I want you to know that if you're not, I'm here for you because you're my client now, and if I take you on as a client, I'm your biggest cheerleader. I'm the one who wants you to succeed. You have to be the first and biggest cheerleader, but I'm right in the background.
Because it's a confidence in yourself, but the people will have confidence in you then as well if they think that you're going to be there if needed, you know. Obviously they're going out there thinking hopefully I won't, but there's a nice little backup plan like there, which is great.
You know, I always say when you walk out the door, there's somebody in the background supporting you, you know, and you can pick up the phone. Now ideally I don't want to get a text at 3 o'clock in the morning or
no.
I'm in the beer garden, I'm having, but do you know what, it's happened.
I'm sure
and I don't mind if I'm awake, I'm there for you. But if I miss a call or something, I'll get back to the person the next day, and if they do need to come back into me, I don't charge them any extra. You know, so.
And that's in contrast then to the anxiety, where people may need to, like you said, you don't want to see them because you want them to feel good and be,
of course,
you know.
but I think it would be very remiss to say, right, you've suffered with anxiety for years, I'm going to have you envision butterflies and fairies and life's going to be fantastic. It generally takes a bit of work between both of you, and you know, a good bit of digging around.
But and that's, I think everybody
uprooting.
And I think everybody with anxiety will understand that it's a longer process than cigarettes.
You're trying to resolve things that have probably been hidden away from you for years, so it's, you know, that takes a bit of work. And with cigarettes, the trick, I believe, is there are other therapists who would argue the toss that an addiction, you know, you have to get to the root of why a person is addicted, and that could be applicable to a lot of addictions. But I think with nicotine is a very strange substance in that I think you can remove nicotine addiction from the life of somebody with the worst anxiety, because it's not even providing them the smallest bit of genuine relief. You don't get high off nicotine.
No,
you don't. It's only its addictive quality is that it makes you feel bad as it leaves your system. And therefore you want more of it to stop that bad feeling. But the bad feeling came from putting it in the first place. So there was never any, like, you never meet somebody who said, I had my first cigarette and Jesus Christ, you know, the joy, I'll never forget that. I coughed, I spluttered, I felt sick, I felt dizzy. But after about 2 months of practicing hard, I got the knack of it. Now you might talk to somebody who had their first drink. I am not promoting alcohol, I am not promoting heroin, but I can see why a person can dabble and think, well, you know, suddenly I was the life and soul of the party, or suddenly all my troubles disappeared. Of course, there's a lot of negatives waiting beyond that, but you can see why somebody can do it and go, I'm going to do that again. But cigarettes are bizarre. You smoke them and you'll never meet anyone who said, oh, my first fags, Jesus, you know. So the only thing they actually do for you is make you feel bad, and then you stop the bad feeling by having another one, but then you want another, and it's cyclical, and it just goes on and on and on. So if somebody is struggling with other stuff, cigarettes aren't helping anyway. So you can turf them out, and I always say they can be the silver lining, even if everything else has gone to, you know. I used to think, well, I'm a prime example. I had loads of issues all over the shop, and I removed smoking, and it was my one thing that I could, like, be proud of, you know. I might be drinking too much, or I might be making other bad decisions, or life might be hard. At least I don't smoke anymore. I manage that, you know.
And
it became something I kind of held proud amongst the mayhem.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
The rest that was going
Yeah,
on, like.
I told you I could ramble about
Yeah, no,
cigarettes
it's
for
good. It's
3 days later.
it'll be
they're
really
like, get
interesting.
out of my house.
Time to go. Could I ask you something that's going to be slightly controversial, I suppose? But
Mm.
I have this thing about like hypnotherapy when I was growing up, and he was on TV a lot. Like
Yeah.
and you see people on the stage, and they have
Sure.
maybe the swinging watch,
Yep.
and they have people barking like dogs, and
Chickens.
chickens is a good one too.
Always with the chickens.
It's like what would you say about that side of it? It's a different thing than clinical. I understand that.
Sure. So what's my opinion of it?
What's
or
your opinion on that kind of the hokey side of
the
hypnotherapy?
hokey side? So
Yeah.
I mean, well, I'll have to stop you there because it's hypnosis, not hypnotherapy.
Sorry.
So there's a distinction.
That's
a huge distinction.
yeah.
So I'll preface this by saying that I am a member of the European Association of Professional Hypnotherapists,
Okay.
who are bound by a code of ethics.
Mhm.
We would not, do not, and will not engage in stage hypnosis.
Good.
Right? So there's that. There'll be no chickens here.
Yeah.
But it's a thing, and,
Yeah.
it's an entertaining thing, and people
Yeah.
enjoy it. But yeah, unfortunately, it's the media representation of hypnosis. So hypnotherapists, I will get people saying, "Oh, you're a hypnotist."
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm a hypnotherapist because for me, the therapist is much
part-
more
yeah,
important
yeah.
part of the equation here. But yeah, I mean, it's entertaining and all that jazz, but like it's not. I know some people say to me, "Is it fake?" And it's not. Some people are highly, highly suggestible,
Yeah.
and so the funny things will go on. But it's if you have you ever attended a stage show?
No, and it's because I don't think I'd like seeing people be like chickens. I don't think it's my
That's
thing.
not really my thing.
No.
If I'm honest, it's
Have
not
you
my
been
idea
to?
of
Have you
a
been
night
to
out.
one?
No, but
No.
I know about it,
Yeah.
and we all know somebody who's been to
Of
one.
course. Yeah.
So everybody is suggestible, okay?
Okay.
Everybody,
Yeah.
without exception, people are suggestible. And a negative example of that is always probably one that people can identify with. But if somebody makes a cruel comment about you as a
Yeah.
child, it sticks with you. Advertising is suggestible. Something
course.
comes on that you suddenly want to eat whatever's on the TV. So we're all suggestible to a degree, but some people are highly, highly suggestible. I'm not. I'm at the lowest end of the spectrum.
okay.
And when I went to train to be a hypnotherapist, at the end of the first day, Joe Keeney, our lecturer, we'd been talking theory all day and I'm getting into this and it's great. And then he sat us down and said he was going to do group hypnosis, so we all sat, and now I want you all to focus on a spot on the wall ahead of you and you close your eyes down. And I sat in the chair and thought, Mother of Jesus, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
This is absolute, quackery.
Yeah.
Because my own perception of hypnosis was like that. I kind of thought I was going to disappear to the plains of Africa and come back afterwards and go, where am I, man? That was wild. But I'm sitting in a chair thinking, I'm completely aware of my surroundings. I'm completely aware of Dr. Keeney talking to me. What next? I've signed up for this, and it's a total of
Yeah.
So I mean, clearly I learned otherwise in the meantime. But what I discovered was, for the purposes of hypnotherapy,
Yeah.
you don't need to be highly, highly suggestible. You just
Okay.
need to be at ease and open to suggestion. And if you're in a clinic, you're already open to the suggestion because you've come in
'Cause
for
you've
the
gone,
help,
yeah.
and you'll be at ease once I'm finished with you, generally.
Yeah.
So, but for me, being hypnotized is the very same as just being relaxed in a chair and having a chat.
Yeah, and I suppose that kind of answers my next question, because
Excuse me.
the thing about it is, I was going to say, if someone was very skeptical about the and because of the facts, we'll say hypnosis, right? So
Sure, yeah.
they're going in, they're not thinking of the hypnotherapy thing, but because everybody is suggestible in some way,
Yeah.
you think it can work regardless of the skepticism. like.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I meet people all the time who
Yeah.
are, I'm here because I'm at my wit's end,
Yeah.
but what's the crack?
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I always say I'm skeptical, borderline cynical
Yeah.
myself, so it's okay. But no, that's the crux of it, is if you're at ease and you're open to
Open to
suggestion.
it, yeah.
It doesn't, it's not for everybody. No therapy is for everybody. No treatment is for everybody. But you'll figure that out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I've had the odd occasion where somebody will just say, this ain't for me.
Yeah.
You know, you're a lovely woman. Thanks very much. I'm out, and that's all right.
That's fine. Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. But most people, I find, even if they are like myself, kind of a bit of a skeptic,
Yeah.
they're fine. You know.
Good. And so, going on from all that and the hypnotherapy and the things you've been doing, and your practice is opening again soon.
Yeah, July.
Yeah. And if people want to contact you, actually, what's the best way of going about?
So you can find me on Facebook, Teresa Bolger Clinical Hypnotherapy.
Okay.
And I'm on the Dancing Soul website. There's a practitioners page on there where you can just select.
I'll put this up on.
Yeah. And I'm about to launch a website. It's just
Okay.
in the last phases. A lovely lady, Fiona, is finishing it up for me, and I'm hoping that'll go live next week. So
nice.
It's going to be teresabolger.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Well, I'll put all this up anyway, and people can have a
it.
look into it. Like, and what's the plans then for the future, immediate or otherwise?
For the plans for the immediate future, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting back into the
Yeah,
clinic
of course,
and seeing
yeah.
people, and just keep doing what I do.
Keep doing. You love it, like.
Yeah. I
Good.
love it.
I'm not going to ask this question for too many more guests because we want to get away from the whole lockdown. But how have you got through the lockdown?
Right.
What have you been up to? I suppose
what
it's
have
a better.
I been up to? Right. I have been up to what I'm always up to, which is being an unsociable person. No, I go to the gym daily, so that was the big upheaval to my life. First world problems.
Yeah.
So unfair. People are dying and I can't get in the jacuzzi.
I was like that too, though.
No, we all have our
Yeah.
daily routine. So for me, that was annoyed me. So I got the last spin bike out of Elvery Sports. The window model. Give us that. So that's kept me saying I got a set of dumbbells. So I do a bit of weight training, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I do my spin, and I like listening to me audiobooks. I listen to me podcasts yourself.
Oh, thanks very much.
Of course. And true crime stuff.
Yeah.
And I have to, dip in and out of that.
Have you any?
You're like, everyone's a serial killer.
Yeah, there is a word. You do get so deep into it. I was watching some stuff on Netflix as well. And I was getting really deep into it.
Oh, yeah, the rabbit hole.
Yeah. What have you got any tips for people for good true crime stuff? Because I know people love that. Like.
Right. So I listen to a UK one called They Walk Among Us.
Okay.
I like that. There's an Australian guy. He's actually anonymous, so I don't know who he is, but the podcast is called Case File.
Okay.
And then there's another one that I really like, but it turns out that the host is a bit of a unpleasant person. I found out. Sword and Scale, it's called.
Okay.
But I mean, it's interesting, but it's so dark. Some of the stuff is like, I thought I was beyond being shocked. I've ever since I was a teenager, morbid fascinations and all that stuff. So Sword and Scale is some of it is very dark. Like you're listening to 99 or 911 calls and stuff that are like, I was sitting there with tears rolling down my legs one day. Like, this is just too much, so I'll dip in and out of those. But they're interesting. It's fascinating to me, all that stuff, because it's obviously so far beyond what you can understand a human being doing. So it's interesting. And then, of course, my Lord and Saviour, Blind Boy.
Yeah, you love. I really like him. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a borderline unhealthy fascination with Blind Boy. I love him. So
he's a fascinating guy.
I listened to Blind Boy's podcast when I discovered it.
Yeah.
So when the COVID-19 lockdown came, I was raging because I was almost caught up. I wish I'd had all of them to listen, but when I discovered him, I was like one after the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a really fascinating guy.
Yeah, I love some of this. The kind of look, this is my own like prejudice or something against. You have this idea of what someone might be like when you hear them speak.
Yes.
Like it's like judging a book by its cover and all those ideas. And then when he starts talking about like art, and he's got so many subjects he loves, and he's so good at speaking on them.
It's all accessible, isn't
it?
Yeah.
And it's great.
He's fantastic, and he could be talking about like his smoke alarm breaking in the house.
That's right.
And it's fascinating.
Yeah.
He could literally turn to any subject, and you're just completely engrossed. It's a gift.
Yeah. It is a gift.
I heard him say a while ago, I think his father, he lost his dad when he was 17, but he said his father was a real storyteller, and you're going, yeah.
That's where you got it from.
That's where that came from.
Yeah.
He really can, just like you say, we could be talking about anything, and when he gets into stuff like the arts, if it was somebody else, you'd probably be well, that's
I'd be the same though. Yeah.
I can be, but you know when it's all a bit kind of stuffy or
Yeah.
pretentious or
Yeah.
whatever, he just relays it in such a way you're like, yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get why you're so
Yeah,
passionate
yeah.
about it, and now I want to go and look at that
Yeah,
painting.
that's true
Yeah,
though. He makes you Google stuff like,
Yeah.
and that's important. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I admire him so much for. I only did. I think I did. Maybe it was a 10 on my own, and they're hard, like, because
Sure.
you're trying to keep it interesting. You don't want to repeat yourself. And if I was going by any template, I was probably going by what he had done and is doing, you know.
Yeah.
And just to kind of, yeah, he just has a way of keeping you interested, and I love his stuff. Even the live stuff he's doing now, and he has interviews on. He puts them at ease, and they always have a bit of crack and
Yeah, there's a
drinking
lovely
cans.
dynamic with people. He's a nice way about him. Did you listen to Bernadette Devlin McAllister?
That was great.
Oh,
Yeah.
It was like, you know, was it 2.5 hours
Yeah,
long?
it's
or something?
fascinating.
I never lost a moment's
No.
interest in it, like, which is, well, it's testimony to the two of them.
Yeah, and she was great. Like, and
yeah.
I didn't know, and so it's bad on me, but I didn't know a lot of her story and stuff, and I
Yeah.
just found it great. And she obviously warmed to him quite quickly. As
Yeah.
people seem to do anyway.
it was a lovely
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah,
And he's doing streaming now, which
the
Which-
Twitch thing.
the Twitch
I
thing.
cannot imagine watching anybody else play a video game, but
I don't. Yeah.
He's actually, his commentary is just hilarious.
Have you seen a bit of it? Yeah.
Just clips of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
like, and like that. I think it's just that there's no contrived effort to be funny. It's just him
Yeah.
waffling, and because he's just not trying, it turns
Yeah.
out to be hilarious.
He's just funny, like, yeah.
He's
Yeah,
all devastated because his horse went on fire in the
Yeah,
last one. And
just-
it's like, what the
Oh,
hell?
in the thing that he's
Twitch
Red Dead
Red Dead
Redemption. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, I was watching
Um,
that this morning. I'm like, anyone else playing a video game, I'd be just no interest. But I was laughing at him, like
He's great, and if people actually are listening to this and haven't listened to him, give him a listen, because he's a fascinating guy, and he's you know, he keeps everything entertaining at all times. It doesn't get too like you said, stuffy. It doesn't get anything that's
and he's great for the mental health stuff as well.
Yeah,
but again, he
true.
just talks from his own experience
Yeah.
and what helped him. And I've talked to male friends who would not normally be too comfortable about chatting about mental health stuff, and they've said, Jesus, you know, that guy's just fantastic.
Yeah.
He made me actually face up to some things
Yeah.
that I wasn't particularly
I
able
think
to
he's got a
before.
huge he's a huge reason why people speak out. I think the same could be said for Brezzy, the singer from
the Blizzards, yeah.
Blizzards, you know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's been so vocal about it, and like you say, men are not the most open with these things, and they've been great. Another thing that you do to escape from work, you're a massive music fan. You always have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything, it's a bit of everything. Is it? You're quite open to stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be big into my like 90s grunge
Yeah.
scene, so that's a big thing. I never tire of
No, me
Alice in
neither. Actually.
Chains and Pearl
Yeah.
Jam, Nirvana. But yeah, I mean, do you know the way when you use Spotify? Do you use Spotify or you
I use
probably-
Apple Music. Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're like, no, I've got it all on file.
Yeah, I've some, but not at all.
I don't use Spotify, but I do. But at the end of the year, they compile like what you've been listening to most. So
Oh, right,
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
said to me, what do you listen to most? I'd say, oh, you know, rocker,
Yeah.
gangster rap.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
huge.
wow.
Like, yeah.
That's pretty, and that obviously just calculates. That's literally all it does. It counts up what you've been listening
Yeah,
to the most.
it'll just say like your most played this.
Oh, I
year
think-
and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, just cover the past.
Yeah.
Year, what album you listen to most, what song you listen to most, and yeah, I was quite surprised at the end of 2019 to be like, oh, okay, so you know, I was listening to like Exhibit and
Yeah.
Dr. Dre, and I love Cypress Hill, and I was actually meant to go and see Snoop Dogg this year
Oh,
in
yeah.
the O2 Arena or the 3 Arena. He was playing on my birthday,
Oh.
and he had Obi Trice. I don't know if you've ever heard of Obi Trice.
Obi Trice. I remember Eminem name checked him at the start of something.
I love Obi Trice, so I was
Yeah.
all excited. I was actually going to face people to go to that gig, so that fell through.
That's a
And,
shame. Is he?
today, actually, I was meant to. Today was Sunstroke.
Oh, was there a
Wasn't it?
festival on? Was there?
Yeah, I think that was meant to be today
Oh, where was that on?
in Punchestown. So the
Oh.
Faith No More were playing, and that's
Wow.
a bucket list
Yeah.
band of mine. And Killing Joke were playing as
Yeah.
well. Huge fan of them.
I didn't even hear about that actually.
Yeah, Deftones were headlining tomorrow. I'm pretty. What date is it?
What day is it? Is it the 13th?
Maybe I'm
Oh, I
wrong.
have it here. Yeah, 13th of June. Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's next weekend. But anyway, this month.
Yeah,
Who
it's
knows
gonna
what day it is?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
It's all a bit crazy. But yeah, this month it was meant to be Guns N' Roses this month and
Oh,
Sunstroke. So yeah, Guns N' Roses are the other huge.
that's a hit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember talking to, actually, now that you mentioned the Spotify thing, and I was talking to Calvin about it, and his was like the Beatles and Christy Moore, and it always shines a light on these kind of random things that
Yeah.
people have listened and stuff.
Yeah.
I said fair play to him on the Beatles. Christy Moore is not for me, but that's sorry.
I love Christy.
Do you like Christy Moore?
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother likes Christy Moore. Simon does. He went to, I think he saw him live actually. It's all that sweaty business
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Christy.
And don't be singing along. He gets very cross about that.
Does he?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Oh,
that.
he's renowned for it. Like
He just what's he on to do? Just sit there and go off at him.
He's the singer. You listen to him. He's not
Oh.
there for a sing song.
Fair enough.
He ain't having a bar of it.
Have you any, before we wrap up, have you any questions for me? If you don't, it's fine.
I could possibly throw a question at you. Actually,
Okay.
I had two in mind earlier.
It's all right.
What was it? Right, the first one. I don't always take my own advice, but what I tell people a lot, when it comes to social media, stop looking at stuff that annoys you, aggravates you, and God knows it's out there.
We're in the same boat on this one. I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about.
So
Yeah.
it's huge, and there's a number of things that get my blood boiling. So we won't go down that route.
Oh,
But
no.
what I always say to people, and I take my own advice, but actively seek out things on the internet that uplift you, educate you, or even just make you laugh. You know, so when you are fed up with the rabbit hole and you want to murder everybody that you see on your news feed, which I obviously don't want
No,
to do.
that's
I want
never
to
happened.
educate them and love them dearly. But there are times
Yeah,
when you're just,
yeah.
humanity can be very disappointing. What do you turn to?
Do you know what I love? And I think I kind of briefly mentioned it recently. I love reaction videos.
Oh yeah.
I've really got into them recently. It's like you were saying about the gangster rap and stuff, and
Yeah,
you're like a white girl from Wexford,
Yeah.
which is
Throwing
great.
gang
Like,
signs.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love watching people who normally listen to a certain type of music, and then they go into something like rock music, which I mean never listen to.
Derek,
Yeah,
have you seen Metalhead Shaq?
I saw you put him up. He's deadly.
I love him.
He's so
I
funny,
love him so
and
much.
he's so successful now, which
Yeah.
is great.
His channel's actually, he's No Life Shack. So he
That's it. Yeah, No Life
but
Shack. Yeah,
Then he sticks on a wig and a bandana and he's Metalhead Shack.
Metalhead Shack.
And he'll like the sheer joy of
He
hearing Rage
loves it.
Against the Machine for
Oh.
the first time. And
did he watch? Did you watch Bulls on Parade or something?
yes,
Was it? Yeah. Oh,
just watching him is a joy.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's so. But that's what I love. There's another one, and if I remember, no, I will remember later. I'll look it up and I'll put it online.
yeah, sure.
There's two guys, and they look up all types of music, but they've been listening to Tool recently, and I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
seen two people be so like freaked out but loving the music. At one point, one of them leaves the room. He's so excited. He can't.
It's too much.
It's just he
There's
can't
something
handle
so
it.
pure about watching
Yeah.
people get the joy of
Yeah,
music.
and it's in music in particular. I do watch some stuff where people, like Americans, watching British shows like the Ricky Gervais podcast and
Yeah.
things like that. But I do find the music in particular is very joyful. Especially if they're watching a song you love, and all of a sudden you hear back what you thought when you first heard it,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's amazing, you
Yeah.
know. And for all sorts of people, and all, like I said, all sorts of people who listen to any type of music, I would say probably No Life Shack. Shack is SHAQ.
Yes.
I would say he's probably the best because he loves what he's watching. Like,
It's
so good.
just, watching him is a joy. You're sitting there with this grin on your face because he's just so enthused about it all. He's funny as well.
When you put it up a while back
It
now,
was an ACDC. So
Yeah.
ACDC, my friend sent me a link of him looking at
Oh,
it.
was it?
I can't even remember which one it was, but it was just incredible. His
And I had
face,
s-
like he just
his
get like that. He
face,
gets
yeah.
so overwhelmed by the.
he has to
joy
stand
of
up
it all.
sometimes and kind of walk away.
Pace around the room and then come back and like compose himself. It's fantastic.
It's brilliant. I think he was watching Aerosmith. Was it Love? No, it wasn't Love in an Elevator, was it? It was one of the Aerosmith ones, and he wasn't even listening to music at one point. He was just narrating the video and how crazy the video was. And he things like that are just, there's something very pure about them,
Sure.
and that's where I dig. That's where I go
Yeah.
on the internet if I
Yeah,
want to find
that's
it. You
a
know,
really nice thing to do. I might expand beyond Metalhead Shack, although he's
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you a couple of other ones. and you can check out if you like them. There's a girl. She's actually a rapper. And she releases her own stuff on her channel as well, but she watches a lot of rock music and even stuff like Fleetwood Mac, not full on rock all the time. And again, she's just very good at kind of watching it, and she has her sayings where she kind of gets really emotional, like Shaq, like No Life Shaq, and she's pretty good. So I have a couple, but just something that you do not have to think about and have to worry about. You just watch it, you know, and get away from stuff. Yeah, that's my answer on that one.
No, I like that. Yeah. I could get into that. Like I say, I've only really adventured into the Metalhead Shack thing. Yeah, I'm definitely up for finding more of that.
Like I said, so many of them worth checking out. Thanks for the question. That was a good question.
I have another question.
Have you go for it?
The other question is, so what would you say now if you found out that somebody you thought was fairly sound and you were getting along grand and possibly, you know, developing a bit of a friendship, and they told you, I don't like the Beatles?
Oh.
I am that person.
No, you did. I think you mentioned it before.
Oh, I was thinking Derek's never going to speak.
No, you did. The way you presented it.
Evangelical about the Beatles. Did I already confess this? Because you and I have met a couple of times now, haven't we? Yeah. Since
you didn't say.
You found me on Facebook and contacted me.
I saw your ad on Facebook. Yeah.
So we just, for anyone listening, they mightn't understand, but so we would have kind of developed a bit of a friendship since meeting them. Yeah. So I didn't know whether I had mentioned it. I was like, you never want to speak.
It's one right. This is interesting, right? Because I was speaking to someone recently. It was Joanne, actually. Sorry, it was Joanne, and she said to me, she's obviously massive into music and that, and she said to me, doesn't really get much from the Beatles, and I had to stop for a second. I'll be honest, like, because the foundations just shook underneath me a little.
What's wrong with you, Joanne?
I think if I was 20, I would have been very upset about that. Like, I think I've copped on a bit to know enough that what I love about them is what I love about them. It doesn't have to be what everyone, and you know yourself as well. Like,
and I totally get why people love the Beatles. Okay, I've got so many friends who are diehard. They just can't understand. Like, why? Like, what's wrong with you?
Like, I don't understand what's wrong with you. I didn't. I'm still.
Fight.
Yeah, I still don't. I don't get it, but at the same time, I have to know that I can leave it at that. Like, it's fine just to say, oh, right, they don't like them, but I do still think like they're missing out a little bit. There's something not quite right. But I would never say it to someone. You know, imagine being that.
I'm joking, obviously. It'd be funny. You terminating all contact, but
this will be the last time we speak.
Actually, I'm not even putting this podcast out.
Edit it out. But no, I know what you mean. Like, look, people have come to me with bands they loved as well, and obviously you will have that little moment if you see the passion about it. You have that little moment by I just say I like them just because I don't want to upset them, but that's not really, you know, you got to be honest about those things. Like, you know, there's no point in being like that. So I wouldn't.
You mentioned Tool there, like my brother it's a religion to Tool. Like he'd be devastated if I didn't like Tool. I do, not the way he does. But you know, some people are just so. But I found the Beatles to be the one band that people just they cannot conceive of. You don't like people, but why?
How?
What's wrong?
I love that though. I love that question. How do you not like them? It's a unanswerable question, really. But
it's a strange one. And I had an ex who like it was almost abusive. But he I remember putting them on one time, and he was doing that thing where he was like, you know, you just don't get it yet.
Yeah, but
you will.
Bit of mansplaining.
And that put the tin hat on it all together. I was like, here, let me out of here.
That's weird. That's weird to sit someone down and go, right, this is what you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to be quiet.
He's a great guy. He's just he loves them so much, and I was still just 2 hours later going, no, nothing. Ain't it? You know, music has to move you, doesn't it?
It has, of course, it does. Yeah.
I don't know. It just falls flat, and I've tried.
Yeah,
I've tried.
Do you know actually?
Fields is nice.
That's a great song. Yeah.
Eleanor Rigby's. You know, I can see.
Yeah, you can see some. Obviously, like some of their songs.
If I never heard them,
wouldn't bother
you. No tears.
Do you know? Though I tried so hard with some bands, thinking that I have to like. I'm not cool if I don't like this band.
Oh yes.
Do you know that way?
Yeah.
And I've done it with a few bands, and I've just been like, The Who is a band that I'm just like, I can't. I like some of their songs, you know, but it's just one of those bands that I can't really get into enough to kind of say I liked them.
Yeah.
Took me a while to get into the Stones, to be honest, but like I say, I don't like a lot of their stuff. I like a few of their albums, you know.
Yeah.
But I would, so to answer, I wouldn't fall out with someone about it.
Great. So we can still be friends.
We can still be friends.
Great.
And I wouldn't sit anybody down, though, and tell them, you gotta.
As he slowly locks the door. Right. We're just going to listen to 3 Beatles albums.
Yeah.
By the
In a
time you
row.
leave here, you will.
And on vinyl. But no, thanks very much for the questions.
Cool.
Teresa, thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's been a very good chat.
I've enjoyed myself.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
And maybe, as I say to all my guests, not all of them, there's a couple I didn't bother say that. If you want to come back in the future at any point,
If you want to have me, no bother.
of course we can always have a chat.
How long have we been speaking for? I was going to say waffling.
For 1 hour and 5 minutes.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
a good time. I think that's around the average time, which is good. I'm actually timing these quite well as he
Yeah.
pats himself on the back.
Like tangent-y me, so I thought I might have.
No, they were good. They were good. In being depth, you know. It's worse when it gets to 25 minutes and I have no questions left.
Well, yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Then we have to start waffling. Listen, I want to thank obviously John for all his hard work and his family, and to Megan, of course. Thank you to Jer, my mother, my father, my grandfather. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done already. The Wheatley. Facebook is the same. Instagram is I always get these mixed up. Oh, Wheatley the Weekly. Yeah. Twitter is Wheatley_there. We're on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, etc. All the other ones that we always name, Google Podcasts, things like that. Go to Discord server if you were into it. I mentioned at the start. If you want to have a chat with us and keep up recommendations. I put out yesterday that The Five Bloods on Netflix is a very good film. You should all watch it. It's great. It's very prescient and of its time. I'll just say that. It's very interesting film. Yeah, and thanks to everyone for listening. It's been a good podcast. Teresa, we'll speak to you soon.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks for
very
having me.
much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Cheers, Darren.
Thanks everyone. All the best. Bye.